Good morning, welcome. We have almost finished. In fact, this will be my last devotion in Mark. We are going to continue though, but just not in Mark. This is my last time to share with you from Mark. We are today in Mark 15, and I'm going to read it to you because we're just reading verses. Oh, that's very close to my face. Morning, Wayne. Nice to see you. I can't see you. You can see me and a lot of me. We're in Mark 15 and we're reading from verses 42 to 47. It was preparation day, that is, the day before the Sabbath. So as evening approached, Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent member of the council who was himself waiting for the kingdom of God, went boldly to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. Pilate was surprised to hear that he was already dead. Summoning the centurion, he asked him if Jesus had already died. When he learned from the centurion that it was so, he gave the body to Joseph. So Joseph bought some linen cloth, took down the body, wrapped it in the linen, and placed it in a tomb cut out of the rock. Then he rolled a stone against the entrance of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, saw where he was laid. So in kind of immediate looking, it seems like a very practical passage. Morning, Nick. You just asked me about biscuits and I replied. But there's a lot going on in here, a lot of stuff relating to kind of Jewish customs and Jewish laws, and a lot of things that we don't fully understand unless we understand those. And as you know, I love a little bit of linking from other bits of the Bible and kind of word stuff, so it's a good passage for me. Firstly, preparation day, the day before the Sabbath, as the passage says. Now on the Sabbath, you weren't allowed to do any work. So burying a body would have counted as work. And also, they didn't like for bodies to die on the Sabbath. That was not what they wanted them to do. They should die before the Sabbath or after the Sabbath. But dying on the Sabbath, not really so good. So in some of the other Gospels, it actually mentions that the Jews ordered for the legs of the people on the cross to be broken because that kind of sped up the crucifixion process. But when they got there, they found that Jesus was already dead anyway, so he didn't need his legs broken. He had very conveniently died before the Sabbath. It was very nice of him to do that for them. So then this guy appears, Joseph of Arimathea. Now, we don't hear of him anywhere else in the Gospel or, in fact, the Bible. We only hear about him at this point for Jesus' burial. And part of the reason we don't hear about him is because, as it says, he was a prominent member of the council. That would have been the Sanhedrin. Those are the people who, just a few chapters ago, decided that Jesus was a criminal and needed the death penalty. So he was part of that. But it says that he was a disciple of Jesus. So he was kind of keeping it secret. He probably would have been, well, certainly checked out the Sanhedrin. I don't actually know what the punishment would have been. He might have been killed himself if he'd admitted to his colleagues that he was a follower of Jesus. So he was keeping it secret. But at this point, he decides to step forward. It's interesting that he decides only after Jesus is dead to stand forward, because it would seem to everyone looking on that Jesus is dead. You know, it's kind of over. But Joseph steps forward and he reveals his identity, he reveals who he follows, and he takes a risk. He goes to Pilate and asks for the body. Now, what's interesting is, obviously, Jesus died as a criminal in the most horrific way, but Joseph treats him as a king when he buries him. He buys new linen for him, he washes the body, he wraps the linen around him, he puts spices on him. In some of the other Gospels, it talks about a guy called Nicodemus helping, and he brings myrrh, which is what was used for very royal burials to stop the body smelling, because they do when they decompose. So he treats Jesus as a king, and then he buries him in his own tomb. Normally for Jewish people, they do respect the dead, especially if they're Jewish people, but they wouldn't have buried a criminal in their own family tomb. So you had this family tomb, like a big cave where you'd put all your family members in to decompose together. But you wouldn't have done that with a criminal, because you don't want their kind of criminal dirtiness to defile the rest of your decomposing bodies. So you would have buried him in kind of a general grave. But it's interesting that his family don't claim the body, and neither do his disciples. You know, they're not there. They've done a runner. We know that from previous chapters. They're afraid, and they're hiding. So Joseph of Arimathea, here he is, and that's what he does. He takes Jesus and he buries Jesus in his own tomb. probably his family tomb alongside his relatives. And he rolls the stone away. And then he sets the stage for what we're going to see in the next chapter by mentioning that Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, were there. The women stayed there. The women had faith. They believed that what Jesus had said about dying and coming back to life was true, and they're already there. They were there at the cross, and they were there now. And maybe some of you are like that today. Maybe you have the faith of the Marys to stand by Jesus through all of it. That's great. Like, that is the kind of faith we should all be aspiring to. Or maybe you're Joseph of Arimathea, a little bit afraid of what your friends will say, what your colleagues will say if you step forward and you say, do you know what, I believe in Jesus. But Joseph did, in the end, step forward and care for Jesus and become part of the gospel, part of the good news. And the last thing I want to say, maybe to those of you who think, well, I'm neither of those, I don't have a faith at all, I don't believe in it at all, and maybe you prescribe to one of those theories, because most people believe that Jesus was real. It's whether you believe that he did what he said he did, isn't it? And so some people say that, well, he wasn't really dead, was he? He was just fainted or, like unconscious, and then when they put him in the tomb, and the nice cool air and the shade helped him come round a bit, because you can come round from being crucified, right? That's the thing. But that is genuinely a theory, and if that's your theory, one of the things I want to say is, look at Joseph of Arimathea. He was in a really prominent position. He was a well thought of person. He was wealthy. He had the money to buy linen and spices to embalm a body. He had the position to be in the Sanhedrin, and he risked that to bury this man. Now, if he had grabbed the body and while washing it and embalming it realised actually he's just fainted, he's going to tell people, because that's his wealth and his position at risk. If this man is dead, if it's all over, then it's all over for Joseph too. But if he's still alive, then Joseph has someone to follow, and he's just taken that risk. So what I'm trying to say is, if I had all that prominence, all that wealth, and I discovered he wasn't really dead, I'm not burying him. I'm telling people about it. You don't embalm a fainted person and bury them in your tomb. Joseph would have known. You can tell. Not that I've ever seen a dead person, but I'm pretty sure that you can tell the difference between a dead one and a live one, and Joseph would have known if he was alive, and he would have said something. So yeah, be like Mary, at least like Joseph, and don't be like the people who think, well, yeah, he was just fainted. That would be what I'd say today. And we've got one chapter to go, and then we're done with Mark, and we're moving on to something else. If you've got any ideas about what you'd like us to do devotions on next, do let us know. We've got a few ideas. We're going to start a Christmassy series in December, so we've got about 20 days of November to do another little reading, study, whatever you want to call this. So if there's anything in the Bible you'd like us to go through, do let us know. We'd love to just do what it is that you guys want rather than what we think you want. So yeah, get in touch.